My name is Madison Clark, 34 years old, living in Colorado and working full-time in travel content. That weekend, my husband told me he was going back home for his father's birthday party. I believed him. Till I saw the photos on Instagram. A lavish engagement party, his entire family in attendance, all beaming. And there, in the middle of it all, was my husband, standing on stage giving a speech in front of everyone. And me, I wasn't invited. Not a word of explanation. Not a spot in the family photo. I posted a single picture from the snowy mountain peak with a caption that sent his entire family into chaos. Have you ever been cut out of the life of someone you love? Treated like you don't exist no matter how hard you try? Leave a comment if you've ever felt like an outsider in the very family you thought was yours. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to follow this journey, where sometimes one photo is all it takes to unravel an entire web of lies. I used to think I was doing everything right. When Ethan proposed, I was the deputy creative director at a media firm in Los Angeles. My career was thriving, but I didn't hesitate. I gave it all up to move to Idaho, a small town where he was born and raised, where his family still lived and gathered for every holiday. I believed love was enough to start over. I believed that if I was genuine and kind, they'd eventually welcome me as part of the family. But for the past 6 years, I've remained a stranger. I'm not exaggerating. I wasn't added to the family group chat. No one asked for my input when planning holidays. I once brought dessert to Thanksgiving and my mother-in-law, Diane, barely glanced at it and said, "Interesting taste." Others were more polite but always kept their distance. One time, I offered to help with Christmas preparations. Diane gave a faint smile. "We have our own traditions, you should rest." So I stood alone in the kitchen, wrapping gifts for children I didn't even know by name. I'm not someone who gives up easily. I learned to cook their favorite stew. Picked up poker because Ethan's brothers loved it. I called my mother-in-law every week even when her replies were curt. I bought birthday cards for every family member, hand-wrote thoughtful notes, hoping these small things would make them see me as family, not just Ethan's wife. Ethan used to say, "They just need time. It's not that they don't like you, they just take a while to warm up." But as time passed, I saw no warming up. Only more distance. Family gatherings I wasn't told about. Group photos where I was cropped out, despite sitting at that very table. Conversations that abruptly ended the moment I walked into the room. I once thought I might be imagining things. But then I overheard something I'll never forget. That morning I came downstairs earlier than usual. They didn't know I was there. Diane was talking to Ethan's aunt in the kitchen. "That girl Madison? She's not like us. She does some silly social media stuff, lives in a fantasy, not grounded like Avery." Avery. Her name always lurked in their conversations. Avery was Ethan's ex-girlfriend, the one his mother had hoped would become her daughter-in-law. They had a brief engagement in college, then broke up due to bad timing. Diane still kept a photo of the two of them in the living room, subtly tucked behind a family frame, but I saw it. What hurt the most was that Ethan never once asked her to put it away. Avery has structure, direction, but Madison... Diane didn't finish, but her tone turned sharp. I stepped back up the stairs in silence, my chest heavy. I had suspected it for years. I just didn't want to believe it. That night I asked Ethan gently, "I'm not the kind of daughter-in-law your mother wanted, am I?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "It'll come around, it's just, you're not what she pictured." One sentence, enough to tear apart the fragile trust I had clung to all these years. I never needed her to love me like her own daughter. I just wanted to be treated like family, like the wife of her son. But the harder I tried, the more I felt like a guest in my own husband's home. Carla and I had planned a ski trip, it was still snowing in March, at a resort near Aspen. I thought it would be a good way to decompress, to escape the constant tension with my mother-in-law and all the formalities of crowded family dinners. Carla booked a cozy lodge tucked in the mountains. Not luxurious, but it had polished wooden floors, a grand stone fireplace, and a soft cinnamon scent in the air. That first afternoon we sat on the balcony watching snowflakes pile gently on the railing. I sighed, still trying to push aside the unspoken weight from my conversation with Ethan earlier that morning. "Don't go," he'd said, folding clothes into a travel bag. "It's mostly extended family you don't know. Mom's a little under the weather. She'll feel guilty if you're there and she can't host properly." I was used to those kinds of excuses by now. In 6 years, Ethan had never once said his mother didn't want me there. He always worded things to sound diplomatic, reasonable, as if my absence was somehow necessary for family harmony. Carla refilled my glass of red wine, her eyes sharp with concern. "You sure you're okay?" "Just a little tired. A few runs on the slopes tomorrow should help." The next morning, snow was falling lightly. We rented skis and spent the morning tackling intermediate trails. Carla, ever energetic, laughed loudly every time she wiped out in the snow, and pulled me down with her in hysterics. It was one of those rare light-hearted moments where I didn't feel like the unwanted wife in someone else's family. By noon, we were sitting in the lodge with hot chocolate and damp gloves when Carla slid her phone across the table. "You should see this." I looked up and took the phone. On the screen was an Instagram post by Chloe Stanford, our former college classmate, now a wedding planner in Boise. The first photo, a stunning banquet hall with a high ceiling, crystal chandeliers, and glass walls glowing with candlelight. But it was the caption that made my heart drop. "Honored to design this gorgeous engagement party for Marcus and Avery this weekend. Fletcher engagement." I couldn't hear anything around me. I zoomed into the photo, and my chest tightened. There was Ethan, my husband, standing in the center of the hall, dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, smiling as he gave a speech. A microphone in his hand, his eyes turned toward the couple beside him. Marcus, his younger brother, and Avery, his ex. The one who nearly became his wife before I ever came into the picture. Behind them stood my mother-in-law, Diane, wearing the dark emerald velvet dress I had suggested to her last year. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at Avery, with a gentle smile and glistening eyes full of pride. I felt a cold rush through my body despite the roaring fire nearby. The corner of my mouth twitched. I wasn't sure if it was anger or shock. I kept scrolling through Chloe's photos. Marcus and Avery cutting a symbolic cake. A shot of Ethan from behind raising a glass in a toast with his brother. Another frame captured Diane placing her hand on Avery's shoulder. A gesture she had never once offered to me. I had been excluded from a major family event, not by accident, not because they forgot, but because they didn't want me there. A deliberate erasure. Carla placed her hand gently on my shoulder. "You saw Ethan in the photo, right?" I pulled my phone from my jacket pocket and opened my own Instagram. I hadn't posted anything since arriving here. I scrolled through a few old pictures, dinner with Ethan, a sunset from a beach trip we took. All of them looked heartbreakingly naive. I opened the camera. Carla seemed to understand. She took the phone, stepped back a few paces, and whispered, "Turn your face toward the light. Hold still." I stood tall, the snowy mountain range stretching behind me. My face was calm, but my eyes gave it away. They said everything I hadn't yet found the words for. After she snapped the shot, I looked at the photo. My face was sharp, cheeks flushed from the cold, hair lightly windblown beneath the brim of my hat, and an expression no longer belonging to a woman who quietly endured, but to someone who had just realized she'd been betrayed by an entire family. I typed a caption. Not much, just one line. "Turns out some places are warmer than home." I hit post. I hadn't intended to start an earthquake. When I shared that photo, all I wanted was to affirm my presence, even in silence. But maybe, when a quiet woman has been silent for too long, even a whisper as soft as snow can trigger an avalanche. Less than 10 minutes after I posted, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Red hearts, fire emojis, cryptic comments from old friends, former colleagues in Los Angeles, and even names I never expected. "Are you okay, Madison? Sending you a huge hug from New York. Whatever this is, you never have to apologize for standing on your own." I read each line, each reaction like someone stepping across soft snow, unsure if there was a pit beneath or solid ground. My heart beat unevenly, part stunned, part scared. I hadn't spelled out the truth, but somehow, people still understood. Some things don't need to be explained. Carla stepped out of the bathroom, her hair still damp, a towel wrapped around her body. Seeing me glued to the screen, she asked softly, "What happened?" I handed her the phone. She scrolled for a while, then exhaled. Slow and heavy. "You know what? I wonder how many women have been quietly erased from moments they should have been part of, just because someone decided they didn't fit." I smiled, but my heart wasn't at ease. By nightfall, I didn't have to go looking for answers. The answers found me. The first message came from Ashley, one of Ethan's high school friends, who had moved back to the same town his family lived in. "Madison, what's going on? People here are talking. I just heard your mother-in-law isn't happy." Before I could reply, a call came through. It was Jade, a former colleague who used to handle internal communications at my old company. Her voice was sharp the moment I picked up. "You dropped a bomb?" I closed my eyes gently. Did I? The post, it's already been reshared on a women's community page with over 100,000 followers. Someone used it as the lead image for a piece called, "When You're Politely Removed from Your Own Life." I swallowed. "You think I should take it down?" Jade paused, then said, "No, because for the first time, you're not pretending." I didn't message Ethan. I waited to see how he would respond, once the truth could no longer be hidden. Around 10 p.m., his first message arrived. "What are you trying to do, Madison?" "No apology." "No, can I call you?" Just a question full of irritation, like I'd spilled wine on his conference table. 3 minutes later, another message. "I'm here trying to salvage a dignified family event and you've made yourself the victim on the internet." I stared at the screen, my lips pressed together tightly. He wasn't mad about what he'd done. He was mad that I didn't stay silent. I turned to Carla, who was making tea in the lodge's little kitchen. "Messaged," I said, my voice oddly calm. He asked if I was okay. He asked what I was doing." Carla poured the tea into mugs and placed one on the table. "Sound familiar?" She was quiet for a while, then looked at me. "So, how do you want to respond?" I shook my head. "You know what? I don't feel like I have to explain anything anymore." A few hours later, my photo appeared on a well-known blog for women who'd been hurt in marriage. Someone had shared it. I sat in front of the fireplace, hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. The photo I posted remained, no edits, no excuses. The messages poured in faster. One came from his mother. "Diane, Madison, you need to know when to stop. We're adults. Family matters shouldn't be aired online." I stared at the text and let out a short laugh. Yes, I used to believe that too. But maybe, if they had truly seen me as family, they wouldn't have left me out of such an important day. Wouldn't have quietly replaced me with someone from the past. Wouldn't have pretended I never existed in their picture. I set the phone down and turned to Carla. "Tomorrow, let's go to the highest slope. The sun will be out. I need another photo. Not to retaliate, but to capture the moment I finally saw everything, clearly." I returned home on a Sunday afternoon, with sunlight tilting over the roof and long tree shadows stretching across the walkway. Ethan's car was already in the driveway, as if he'd come back early to wait. I stepped up the familiar porch steps that now felt strangely foreign. The doorknob was colder than I expected. Inside, almost nothing had changed. The floor lamp still angled awkwardly, Ethan's coffee mug still stained at the rim. But the air was different, heavy. As if the things I had seen on that mountain followed me home. Trailing through the hallway, pressing on the heart of this house. Ethan stood in the kitchen, still wearing a white dress shirt and gray slacks, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. Not birthday party clothes, the kind of outfit he wore when he needed to impress someone who wasn't me. Before I could say a word, he spoke first, voice tight as a wire. "You embarrassed my whole family." I set my keys on the table, peeled off my gloves, and looked directly at him. "That's how you're starting this?" He frowned. "You turned a joyful family event into social media gossip. Do you know how much damage control everyone's doing right now? You call that a joyful event?" I tilted my head slightly, feeling no more anger, just a quiet, steady emptiness. "It was Marcus and Avery's engagement party," Ethan said, as if that somehow softened the truth. "Not mine." I stepped closer, keeping my voice even. "You gave a speech in front of the whole room. Your mother stood beside Avery like she'd just welcomed her daughter-in-law back. And I was on a mountain, watching it unfold through photos from old friends. How do you think that felt? Ethan turned away, bracing himself against the kitchen counter. I didn't want you to get hurt. My mom, she said the party was for those who truly belonged. My heart clenched, but I kept it hidden. And what about you? I asked. Do you think I belong in your family? He turned back, eyes avoiding mine. Madison, you know how my mom is. She's very traditional. She wants everything to be perfect. Perfect by erasing me from the picture? My laugh was short, but my voice cracked faintly. He rubbed his forehead. I didn't know what to do. Everything happened so fast. I stepped back and looked around the kitchen, the place where I used to cook the dinners he loved, where I once left little handwritten notes stuck to the fridge. Small things, I thought, were part of a love built from both sides. But now I understood. I had been building it alone. I just want to know, I said, eyes locked on him, when your mom said I didn't belong. Did you say anything? He stayed silent, that same silence I had forgiven dozens of times before, hoping it meant he was trying to protect me. But today I no longer mistook it for love. You didn't do anything, I said softly. You let them plan. You knew I wouldn't be invited and you went anyway. Ethan tried to step closer. You're overreacting, it was just a party. Don't let a post ruin everything. I stepped back. The post didn't ruin anything. You did. When you let me pack for a trip you knew was a lie. When you let me believe I was part of your life. He fell silent, then almost pleading. I don't want to lose you. I turned and walked up the stairs. What are you doing? He asked from behind. I'm packing, I answered, without turning around. Don't worry, I'm only taking what's mine. I'm not overreacting, Ethan, I said as my hand touched the bedroom doorknob. I'm just waking up. I left the house I used to call home on a gray afternoon. No rain, just clouds heavy with silence. My suitcase rolled across the wooden porch with a hollow sound. Ethan didn't follow. He remained at the top of the stairs, one hand gripping the banister, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. But he said nothing. No, don't go. No, I'm sorry. And I didn't need to hear it. Carla greeted me with a tight hug right outside the door. Her apartment had one small bedroom, and the living room had been turned into a multi-purpose space. A sofa bed, a bookshelf stacked with old magazines, and some cacti placed in a messy but beautiful way. Stay as long as you need, she said, pushing my suitcase into the corner. This place used to be where I hid from the world. Now, just treat it like it's yours. I smiled, saying nothing. My throat was dry, not from exhaustion, but because everything was happening so fast. Yet strangely, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was stepping out. That first night at Carla's, I couldn't sleep. I lay still, staring at the ceiling marked with tiny paint cracks, thinking about the years I spent being the reasonable wife, gentle enough, independent enough, never too much trouble. The next morning when I opened Instagram, the mountain photo had over 7,000 likes, hundreds of comments, many from people I didn't even know. But it was the private messages that overwhelmed me. I'm my husband's second wife. His first family controls everything. I've never been invited to his mother's birthday. Says I've spent 10 years being called David's wife instead of my name. I thought I was the only one who felt invisible. I used to think I was crazy for feeling anxious at every holiday. Thank you for making me realize this pain isn't invisible. I read every line, my heart aching at its softest spot. These women didn't know me, but they knew exactly what it felt like to be silently erased from a family photo, while still expected to smile to keep the peace. Carla walked out with a big cup of coffee and handed it to me. You read them, huh? I didn't think I'd reach so many people. Because you told the truth. And that kind of truth, not everyone's brave enough to say it. I was about to scroll through more messages when a new email alert popped up. It was from Eliza Walton, editor at a magazine focused on middle-aged women and those who've gone through divorce. Subject: We want you to tell your story. I opened the email, my hands slightly shaking. Eliza wrote, We saw your post. It rings like a voice our readers have been waiting for. If you're willing, we'd love to invite you to write a personal essay. when you're married but still not family. Write it like you're talking to a 40-year-old woman sitting in her car after a family gathering, wiping off her mascara with the tissue, wondering if she's being too sensitive. I finished reading with a wave of mixed emotions. I'm not a writer, but I know that feeling. I've sat in that car, mascara smudged in the rearview mirror. Carla looked at me, eyebrows raised. You're gonna say yes, right? I nodded. That evening I opened my laptop. At first I didn't know where to begin, but then my fingers began typing the first lines. Some families never yell at you, they just act like you were never there, and it takes years to realize the worst pain isn't being hated, it's being treated like you don't matter. I didn't embellish anything, I told it straight. About the birthday party I was excluded from, about the family group chats that never had my name, about how Ethan used silence as a decision. I submitted the essay at midnight. 3 days later, Eliza replied the piece would be featured on the next issue's cover story, along with a thank you note. You've named a feeling that so many women couldn't put into words. I set down my phone, full of emotion. I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in years, I felt heard and seen, not standing in a kitchen waiting to be asked, but standing in a community, saying something simple. I was there. And I stepped out. I was folding blankets on the sofa bed in Carla's living room when my phone buzzed. The name that popped up made me freeze. Lena Fletcher. Ethan's cousin. My age, the only person in his family I ever felt I could genuinely smile around. We were never close, but during every holiday, Lena always asked about my work, mentioned articles I'd posted, and once invited me for coffee after a Christmas party. The coffee never happened, but I held on to those small gestures. They were the only proof I had that I still belonged somewhere. Her message was only 2 lines. I know this hurts, but I have to be honest. They never planned to let you stay. I sank to the edge of the couch, still holding an unfolded pillowcase. For a few seconds, I didn't know how to reply. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear more. But Lena's words turned a quiet fear into undeniable clarity. I texted back. What do you mean? Less than a minute later, she called. I picked up. Her voice was soft, hesitant. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but after reading your post and seeing how the family reacted, I can't stay quiet anymore. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the only way to let the truth keep flowing. Did you know, Lena continued, what Ethan's mom said to Avery, even before you and Ethan got married? I bit my lip. No, she told Avery. You're the one Ethan should marry. Madison is just a phase, she won't last in this family. A thin layer beneath my chest felt like it had been torn open by someone's fingernail. I had always felt like an outsider, but I used to think, at the very least, that feeling came from natural differences. I never imagined it had been planted long before, deliberately. And Avery? I asked quietly. How did she respond? Lena hesitated. I don't know everything, but I've heard they've kept in touch. Quietly. These past few months, Ethan's been going home a lot for so-called family matters. But I saw pictures of him and Avery having lunch together twice. One time they were sitting really close at the Bellevue Hotel bar. I saw it with my own eyes. I closed my eyes. That was the place Ethan had said he was meeting his cousins. Lena's voice sped up like she was afraid I might hang up. I don't think there's anything shady going on, but Ethan hasn't been fully honest, and I know for a fact his mom personally helped Avery plan the engagement party with Marcus. My body stiffened. Plan? Yes. She's the one who suggested the venue, hired the florist, arranged the menu. I overheard her once saying, at least Avery is finally marrying into the family. I couldn't stop the dry laugh that escaped me. Marrying in, what is this, a royal court? Lena didn't laugh. I know this is too late. And I know you don't want anyone's pity, but I need you to know one thing. Every time you felt excluded, it wasn't random. They never meant to include you in the picture, because they never planned on keeping you in it. I sat still for a long time after the call ended. Every memory fell like loose rubble. Diane's evasive glance when I asked about Easter plans, the way Ethan jumped when I walked in while he was texting, All the times Avery just happened to show up at events I was told I was too busy to attend. I had always wondered what I did wrong. Was I not friendly enough, not graceful enough? Did I fail to understand their family culture? But the truth was, I was never allowed to win. I had walked into a game whose rules were already written, and the ones who wrote them never intended for me to stay. Carla walked in just as I sat on the rug, laptop on my lap, eyes staring at nothing. "Who did you talk to? You look like you just walked through a storm." I told her everything, no fast-forwarding, no skipping parts. Carla didn't curse. She just sat beside me, gently gripped my arm and whispered, "Honestly, you've always been stronger than all of them combined. But now you've got one more reason not to ever go back. Don't you?" I gave a slow nod, letting the weight of it settle between us. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I saw it clearly now. I was never their choice. I was just a placeholder, while they quietly worked to bring the past back in. And Ethan, he knew. He let it happen. His silence was no longer weakness. It was complicity. And maybe the cruelest kind of betrayal is the person you love silently agreeing to let you be erased from their life. Gently and without a trace. And maybe the most painful kind of betrayal is when the person you love agrees, quietly, to let you be erased from their life. Gently and without a trace. On Tuesday night, as I was finishing the last lines of a new piece about chosen family, there was a knock at the door. Not urgent, but slow and familiar, so familiar my heart sank immediately. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Carla stepped out of her room, holding a cup of tea. Her expression wasn't surprised, just quietly questioning. "I'll get it." Ethan stood there, long coat hanging loose, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. But what struck me wasn't how tired he looked, it was the way he looked at me. Raw confusion, like he had prepared so much to say, but the moment he saw me it all felt pointless. "I need to talk," he said. No begging, no pleading, but I could tell his defenses were gone. "I didn't invite him in." Carla set her tea down and walked into the other room, leaving space for the two of us. Ethan stepped just past the doorway, standing on the edge of the rug, like he'd turn around and leave the second I said no. I crossed my arms, facing him. "Go ahead." He swallowed hard, eyes avoiding mine. "I know I was wrong not telling you the truth about the party, but I was pressured. My mom, she rushed everything. I didn't think it would turn out like this." "No, you thought you could separate the two, keep your mom happy, and still keep me. And you were wrong for believing that was possible." I walked to the table, poured a glass of water, raised it to my lips, but didn't drink. I needed a few seconds to stay calm, to stop myself from stepping backward into softness. "Even," I said, voice steady like a windless lake, "you weren't pressured. You stayed silent because you agreed." "I didn't agree to shut you out," he said quickly, voice rising. "I just didn't want to cause conflict. You know how controlling my mom is. I'm tired of being stuck in between. And you chose the easier side." He didn't answer. I stepped closer, still calm. "Do you know, when I packed your suitcase for that trip I wasn't invited to, I left a little note. It said, 'Missing you already,' with a heart sticker." He closed his eyes. I saw it. "And while I stood in the snow thinking my husband was with his family, you were raising a glass with your ex-girlfriend, giving a toast at an engagement party your mother orchestrated." I gave a small laugh, not bitter. Just the sound of a throat gone dry from holding in too much pain. "Do you even know what you did, Ethan? You didn't just hurt me, you woke me up." He stepped forward. "Madison, we can fix this. Go to counseling, talk it through. I'll speak to my mom. I lifted my hand gently to stop him. "You had 6 years to do that, 6 years to tell your mother I'm your wife, your family. But you didn't. And now that there are consequences, now you realize what matters?" He froze, like I had slapped him, without lifting a hand. No tears came, no sobs, only a quiet release, like something heavy had finally been lifted from my chest. "It's not that you didn't love me," I said. "I know you did. But you didn't love me bravely. And love without courage, it's compromise. where one person always ends up smaller. Ethan's shoulders dropped. His voice was low. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I pushed my head slightly. I'm not talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about choice. And today, I choose not to stay where I have to beg to be seen. I didn't walk him to the door. He left on his own. His footsteps were heavy, but firm. He didn't look back. 1 month after that final conversation, I returned to Aspen. Same mountain. Same snowy path where I once stood frozen among ringing skis and the scent of hot chocolate in the air. But this time, I came alone. No Carla, no one behind the camera. I rented a small room in the corner of the lodge, near a window that looked out over the sloping hill. Simple, quiet, no buzzing phone, no accusatory texts, no half-hearted defenses. That morning, snow was falling gently, fine, powdery flakes. I took the old lift to the top of the peak, wearing a dark coat, a plain knit beanie, my hair loose. No posing, no framing. I didn't plan to take any pictures. I just wanted to stand there. The wind brushed past my ears, whispering softly like a voice from the past. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and felt my lungs fill with something cold, sharp, and clean. As if forgiveness didn't need to be spoken to be real. When I opened my eyes, I instinctively spread my arms wide, like there was nothing left to hold on to. I stood that way for several minutes, then glided down the slope, effortless. What I didn't know was that farther down the same mountain ridge, someone else was capturing that moment. A travel photographer shooting a series called Faces in Nature. 3 days later, while I was working from a small coffee shop at the base of the mountain, my phone buzzed. A message from Eliza, the magazine editor, who had invited me to write before. Madison, do you have a minute? There's something you should know. I called her back immediately. Her voice was a mix of excitement and disbelief. Where were you up on Summit Peak last weekend? I was, but I was only up there for a few minutes. Well then, you're on the cover of next month's issue. I froze. What are you talking about? Have you heard of James Toller, the travel photographer who did the Earth Seen Through Grace series? Yes, I follow his work. Eliza laughed. Well, he was there Saturday. You're the woman in his shot. Arms spread at the summit. Your face isn't clear, but the energy, it's unmistakable. I was silent for a few seconds. And it's been published already? She sent me a link. The photo was titled, Freedom Has a Face. I opened the post. The image filled the screen, me alone against a pale gray sky and endless mountain ridges. My face slightly turned, hair lifted by the wind, arms open wide as if embracing the whole world. The comments section was filled with hundreds of reactions, strangers writing that the photo moved them to tears. Some said they had saved it as their wallpaper, a reminder that sometimes letting go isn't a loss, it's a beginning. Perla looked at me from across the kitchen. What is it? I glanced up, still staring at the screen. I didn't know I could be seen like this from the outside. My first office was a small attic space above an independent bookstore, with a window that opened to a row of maple trees turning with the seasons. No flashy signs, no sleek reception. Just an old wooden desk, a corkboard of ideas, and one handwritten quote pinned above where I work. A woman doesn't need an invitation to belong in the frame. I named my company Northlight Studio, Light from the North. A name that carried both visual weight and the quiet truth I had spent half a life searching for. A source of light that no one else could block. My first clients came from the very women who had messaged me after that mountain photo. Small business owners, artists, freelancers, and women quietly stepping away from lives that once controlled them. I didn't teach them how to reinvent themselves. I simply helped them see themselves more clearly, through image and voice. What had once been dimmed by you should and you must was now allowed to shine naturally, unapologetically. One Thursday afternoon, as I was editing slides for an upcoming workshop, my inbox pinged, a new email from Lena. Hi, Madison. It's been 3 weeks since I moved out of my parents' house. I rented a little apartment with a balcony that looks over a shared lawn. For the first time, I picked my own bedding without anyone giving opinions on the colors. You made me brave enough to leave the life that was squeezing me, not with advice, but by living as yourself. Thank you, Lena. I read the letter over and over, then printed it and tucked it into the leather journal I used to collect things that matter. That night, Carla came over with 2 glasses of wine to my new apartment just outside the city, where the evening sun slid through the curtains and made everything glow like a painting. We sat on the rug, surrounded by sticky notes, laptops, and a few unread magazines. Carla swirled her glass, then asked the question I knew would come eventually. If someone asked you about Ethan now, what would you say? I took a moment, letting the silence speak first. My eyes wandered across the room. The artwork I chose. The olive green armchair I bought myself, and, on the center wall, the photo of me on the mountaintop. Printed large, framed in raw oak. No caption, no filter. I turned back to Carla, smiling. I don't need to say anything, they just need to look at me now. She smiled back. That should be your company's slogan. I laughed. Careful, I might actually use it. We clinked glasses, the soft chime like a quiet affirmation. Healing doesn't come from time alone, but from facing the truth, no matter how much it hurts. I walked over to the photo on the wall, looked closely. I still recognized my eyes from that day. Calm, free, needing no explanation, needing no one's permission. I didn't erase what had happened. I just stopped where I needed to, before I completely lost myself. And now, I'm not outside the frame anymore. I'm the one holding the camera, the one choosing the light, the one rewriting the caption for my own life. Have you ever been in a relationship where no matter how hard you tried, you still felt like a temporary guest in someone else's life? Have you ever been excluded not by words, but by polite indifference disguised as kindness? It took me 6 years to learn not everyone has the courage to love you fully, and not every place called family is worthy of being your home. Recognition doesn't come from a seat at their table. It comes from the way you stand when they take your invitation back. If you felt that, or you're still in it, leave a comment below. I always read them, and maybe someone else out there will find themselves in your story. Don't forget to follow this channel for more real journeys about family, about choosing for yourself, and about finding your worth in a world that sometimes makes you forget you ever had it.